The Siege of Orléans, fought between October 1428 and May 1429, was a decisive moment in the Hundred Years' War, marking a significant shift in the war's dynamics. The French, under the leadership of the Dauphin Charles VII, had been struggling to resist the English invasion of France. However, the arrival of the visionary figure Joan of Arc changed the course of history. Her role in lifting the siege became a symbol of French resilience and a pivotal turning point in the war. Background: the siege and French desperation. By the late 1420s, the English had made significant advances in France, following a series of victories like the Battle of Agincourt, 1415, and the Treaty of Troyes, 1420, which had disinherited the Dauphin Charles VII and recognized Henry V as the rightful heir to the French throne. The English were in control of much of northern France, including the strategic city of Orléans, which lay on the Loire River and was crucial for controlling the south. The Siege of Orléans began in October 1428, when English forces, led by Sir John Talbot and other commanders, surrounded the city in an attempt to cut off French supplies and force a surrender. Orléans was one of the last remaining strongholds in the hands of Charles VII, and its fall would have left him with few remaining territories to defend. Joan of Arc's vision and role. In early 1429, a young peasant girl named Joan of Arc, claiming to have received divine visions, came to the court of Charles VII in Chinon. Joan convinced Charles that she had been sent by God to lead the French forces to victory and ensure his coronation as King of France. Although initially skeptical, Charles agreed to give Joan command of an army to relieve the siege of Orléans. Joan's arrival in the French camp brought an immediate sense of hope and inspiration to the French soldiers who had been demoralized by years of English dominance. Joan, dressed in armor and carrying a banner, was seen as a symbol of divine intervention, and her leadership began to energize the troops. The Siege of Orléans. Joan's impact. Joan's strategy and leadership during the siege were instrumental in the French victory. 1. Moral and tactical leadership. Joan's presence and her charismatic leadership uplifted the morale of the besieged French forces. She rallied both soldiers and civilians to resist the English siege. Joan also advocated for a series of coordinated attacks on English positions, which destabilized their control over the city. 2. Breaking the siege. Under Joan's command, the French launched a series of counterattacks against the English fortifications. The siege lasted for several months, with the French gradually gaining ground. The French forces besieging the English positions began to gain the upper hand, and on May 8, 1429, after several key victories, the English forces were forced to lift the siege. 3. Strategic significance. The victory at Orléans was a huge blow to the English, who had held the city for months. The lifting of the siege turned the tide of the war in favor of the French. It reinvigorated the French resistance and gave Charles VII the momentum he needed to eventually reclaim much of the territory lost to the English. Aftermath and Joan's legacy. The Siege of Orléans was a turning point in the Hundred Years' War. It not only marked the end of a long period of English dominance in central France, but also elevated Joan of Arc to national hero status. Joan's success at Orléans led to Charles VII's coronation at Reims later that year, fulfilling her prophecy and solidifying her role as a key figure in the French resurgence. However, Joan's success was short-lived. She was captured by the Burgundians in 1430 and handed over to the English, who put her on trial for charges of heresy and witchcraft. She was executed by burning at the stake on May 30th, 1431, at just 19 years old. Despite her death, Joan's legacy lived on, and she was later canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church in 1920. Conclusion. The Siege of Orléans, 1428 to 1429, marked by Joan of Arc's leadership and inspiration, was a defining moment in the Hundred Years' War. The French victory not only lifted the siege, but also revitalized the French cause and paved the way for Charles VII's coronation as King of France. Joan's role in this victory solidified her place in history as a symbol of French courage, divine providence, and national pride. Her legacy continues to inspire generations, and the Siege of Orleans remains one of the most significant victories in the history of the 100 Years.